The Cross Lake, we're having a road assessment hearing workshop for Wildwood Ranch Road is going to be the first one. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Reese.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. The meeting tonight is a preliminary improvement hearing for the improvements of Wildwood Ranch Drive. And this is a project that we did hold a series of hearings on last year. We did go through the design of that project and bidding, and the bids came in higher than expected, and so this project was postponed to be included with the 2021 street improvement projects. And so that's why we're holding our hearings again in accordance with Chapter 429 assessment procedures. So the way this will go tonight is I will first introduce myself as Dave Reese, the project engineer from Widseth that the city's hired to do the feasibility study and carry it through the hearings. We are the firm that designed this last year and put it out for bids. I'll go through my presentation, which includes information from the feasibility study. When I'm done with that, we'll open it up for City Council questions. If you have none, then we'll proceed and have the folks that are in attendance in person here tonight. If you have any questions, please come up to the podium so that we can hear it with the microphone. This is being recorded, and we'll post it on the city's webpage. So if somebody couldn't make it tonight, they can watch it afterwards. Also, after we're done with the folks that are here in person, then we'll open it up to anyone who is Zooming in with us tonight. And at that time, if you have a question, if you could simply raise your hand, then TJ will unmute you and you'll be able to ask your questions at that time. Okay? So with that, I'll go through this presentation. So once again, proposed Wildwood Ranch Drive improvements. Wildwood Ranch Drive is project area number 1 in the 2021 street improvements. It's located down at the southern end of the city off County Road 103 in this location here. The other project areas are highlighted, and we'll be holding hearings on them as well this week. This is a little bit more detailed map of the project area. So the project is beginning at the intersection of Wildwood Ranch Drive and County Road 103, and it goes to the end of the portion of the road that's been maintained by the city, which ends in a cul-de-sac, circular cul-de-sac. This is the plat of Wildwood Ranch Estates that shows the publicly dedicated right-of-way, which is 66 feet in width. It shows the circular cul-de-sac area. The right-of-way extends on to the end of this parcel, but this portion is currently undeveloped and is wooded. The blacktop area ends in the circular cul-de-sac at this location. Also, there's Outlot B, which is not a building lot. It's a buffer and as part of the overall plat, I believe is everyone has a common interest in that area, I believe. That's a member of the plat. Okay, the existing conditions, we have an 18-foot wide pavement on this roadway that's existing. There's some areas on this road that have shown some deflection, which would indicate some subgrade issues. There's also some pavement cracking that extends across the roadway. That the cracks seem to be widening every year. We've put a lot of maintenance into them, crack filling and patching, and sometimes this is an indicator of something below the aggregate base and pavement, something wrong with the subgrade, maybe there's organics. Other times it's due to utility trenching that crossed the roadway in those locations and left kind of a fault line that ends up showing up several years later after it's paved. So the proposed improvements haven't changed from last year. What we're proposing to do is exactly the same thing that we were proposing to do last year when some of you were possibly at the hearing at that time. We are looking at doing some subgrade correction, subgrade excavation to remove subsoils that we feel are part of the problem, replacing them with granular soil materials. The pavement itself will first be reclaimed in place, and that material will be salvaged. And then we'll be adding some additional cross culverts and inlet structures to help with the drainage that will ultimately flows to a low point down in this area, and a new culvert will extend underneath the roadway here. We understand that there's been some drainage issues with some ponding that's happening in this area, and we're also going to try to address that and get that to, again, move on down to the low area. There isn't a lot of room for these driveways to have culverts underneath them. But we can put some small diameter culverts in there, and that's what we had designed for the project last year. And we would anticipate proceeding with that plan as we did before, with adding some small diameter culverts underneath the driveways. We really would like to maintain at least 6-8 inches of material over the top of those culvert pipes so that we don't get what you've seen in the past sometimes is some humping over the culvert pipes with frost action. So we want to try to avoid that, but we want to be able to get the water to move out along the ditch. Okay. This is an updated cost estimate from last time, and this is based on the unit prices that we saw in the bid. We had one bid that was received on the plans last year, and it was kind of late in the year when we got the bid, and so I think the contractors all at that time had quite a lot of work on their plate, and we're probably fortunate to get the one bid we did, but it was, in our opinion, rather high. That's why we recommended that we pass on that bid and include it with a larger project to benefit from better pricing. But this would show, with the contingency here, that of all the things that we included in the scope of the project, construction and contingency up around $150,000 in construction, and typically the soft costs, engineering, admin, legal, the costs that it takes to carry this through the assessment process would be about $30,000. So that's resulting in a cost just around $181,000. Now I expect that if we include this with the larger package that's being let in one contract, that we would get better pricing than this. Okay? And this is the bid tabulation from the one bid that was received last year, and that bid was just under $149,000. So that's the correlation between our estimate and the bid from last year.
Excuse me, Dave. I got one comment from someone on Zoom is asking to show the details a little bigger so they can see them.
Okay.
That they're coming in so they can see the totals.
I'll see if I can do that. And so the bottom number on the left was the estimate originally on this project for the construction costs last year. The number on the right is the actual bid that was received, $148,800. Okay, so we've talked about the project costs and the project scope, what's going to be done, what we think it'll cost. And as far as the assessments are concerned, again, nothing's changed from what we did last time. We're looking at basing the assessments on, as Chapter 429 requires us to do, based on the benefit received by the properties. So what the city did was commission a licensed appraiser to go out, take a look at the road, look at the properties, and provide a benefit opinion, which is typically in a range of cost for each lot. And Nagel Appraisals was commissioned to do this. They looked at the property and determined that it would be in the range of $3,000 to $7,000 per lot for this particular project. And what the city did with that last year was look at the 13 accessible parcels on this project and a proposed assessment of $4,000 per lot. So the total project cost estimate, $180,900. Total estimated assessments then would be $52,000, and the remainder would be the city's cost on this particular project. And $4,000 per lot is what was recommended last year. That's what's being recommended this year as well. Okay, the procedural schedule for an assessment project has required us to do some work up front. That carried through the fall, through December and January. Right now we're holding the hearings on improvement February 2nd. The next step after holding the hearings would be for the City Council to pass a resolution ordering the improvement and preparation of plans. And I have February 4th on there. I think it's more appropriate for the City Council to deal with that resolution at its Monday regular council meeting. So we're expecting that resolution to be on the agenda for Monday. And then the steps that would follow after that would be a period of advertising for public bids and the bid opening. Then we go through accepting a bid. Construction would normally take place between May and August. And then we would hold a final assessment hearing after the project construction, typically. The City Council has the option of holding an assessment hearing before construction if it wishes. Then we would hear any public comment on assessments and then adopt the assessment roll and send it to the county auditor for inclusion on the tax rolls, taxes to be paid for 2021. The interest rate on the assessments is something that's set by the city council. The term as well, which has typically been 10 years for an assessment of a road project. And the interest rate is typically 1% to 2% over the borrowing rate that the city has on the project for the bonding. And overall, of all the projects on the 2021 improvements, the city needs to assess a minimum of 20% of the total project costs. On this particular one, we're not meeting that, but overall, if this is included with all the projects we have slated from the capital improvement plan, we would be assessing roughly about 41% of all the projects slated for this year. Okay. All right. So that concludes that presentation. If the city council has questions, I'd take those. Mr. Andrews.
Dave, I have one. You're saying the construction would happen 2021, would
That's
go
correct.
on 2021, build there, but taxes would actually be paid in 2022?
Taxes then would go beyond 2022.
So it'd be at least a year from now, basically.
Yeah, there's some interest that may apply after adoption of the assessment roll itself. And state law allows a property owner to pay their assessment within 30 days after adoption of the assessment roll without incurring any interest. After that time has elapsed, then interest will start accruing. So that is an important thing for many people.
So do people get an actual extra bill this fall? I'm just asking.
It would be wrapped into the overall annual payments on the tax rolls. Okay, any interest that accumulated after adoption of the assessment roll this fall.
Okay. Because I'm thinking I get a tax bill March, April that tells me what's owed for 2021. I'm trying to figure out how this hits that bill, if it really doesn't hit till 2022 or not.
Yeah.
Got it, so it'd be a 2020, so people would have a year to plan a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, just checking, thanks.
I'm just going to pop back a few slides here. Let me grab my book. So we did look at the typical term and interest rate that the council has used in the past, and usually that's around 4 to 5%, but borrowing rates have been really good lately, so it may be less than that you set this year. The term has typically been 10 years. Okay.
Yeah, Dave, as far as borrowing rates go, I've done some preliminary work on this with our bond counsel. And remember, as a council, we were looking at doing a larger issue to put the fire truck along with this project into a larger issue. And the preliminary numbers, we're still working on them. Interest rates are very low right now. And we're looking at somewhere around 1.5%. Now that'll depend on what the rate is when the bonds are ultimately issued. And if you schedule that out, if you're doing these road projects along with the equipment, it's possible for us to combine an issue. And we'd be looking at somewhere in that $200,000 range a year for payments over about 10 years, 10 to 15 years. It all depends on what the rate is and how much what the bids come in at.
Here, I need to understand, you would only be paying for your street.
Yep.
Fire truck is separate.
Yeah, they'd only be paying for their street, but the advantage they have is we'd be looking at a lower interest. We'd take advantage of a larger bond issue to get a lower interest rate. And their interest rate would be lower then too.
I saw a comment, so that's why I was.
I have a question about you had 149,000 was the bid last year. That didn't include engineering and administrative then,
That's correct.
because you're at 150,700 now.
That's right.
Okay. Do you know how you're handling the ponding?
The bonding,
The ponding, you said there was a problem with ponding on the one end of the
right.
road. Is that where you're coming in with those culverts?
We're looking
or
at culvert
do you have a
installation.
different plan?
Culvert installations to help deal with that.
Grading it into a lot of these.
Right. Are there any other questions?
What happens to this project if you take the blacktop off of there and you find out there's no class 5, there's no base?
Well, it's
You
a,
did not do any borings, correct?
no, we did
You
not.
don't know what's underneath the road.
Not this particular road, no.
And you've got 350 yards of class 5, same problem. That you've allowed in your estimate.
Right,
So that's assuming there's some subgrade there.
right. When we reclaim a road, typically we'll blend that with the material that's immediately beneath it. In a lot of cases, we've run into roadways that have no aggregate base at all, sometimes even topsoil. But what we found is that when we mill that pavement and blend it with the subsoil, it generates something typical to a class 7 aggregate, which is very close to a class 5. It usually gives us a really good base to build off of. And then we typically add 2 to 3 inches of virgin aggregate class 5 on top of that, and then a new wearing course.
And that's the 350 yards that you
Yeah.
got in here?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're also planning on subcutting quite a bit of soil on this particular road project and replacing it with granular, so that will help stabilize the roadbed.
So do you take compaction tests or borings or whatever before you put the overlay down so that you know that you don't have the same kind of street you
Yeah.
have now?
Sometimes we do enlist compaction testing to be done, density tests, nuclear densities to be taken on the material. Other times we do a load test with the contractor's equipment and look for areas of deflection with our construction field folks. So they'll be watching that when it's happening.
So there's an engineer on site then?
Yep.
So you had, your only estimate you had last year was 148,000. Now your current estimate is 150. You're kind of using that.
Kind of using the same bid.
Last
price.
year, the price came in, your proposed price was 117, so it came in significantly higher.
Yep.
In this case, if this year, if it comes in at 121, I mean, the project is going to cost less,
Yes.
30,000 less, or whatever it comes in at.
Yep.
But the assessment won't change. Right now, the
Assessment's
percentage,
based on benefit.
citywide, the assessment's about 41%. The assessment on this particular road is a little over 30%,
Yeah.
roughly, you know, without figuring it out.
Yeah.
But it's less than the citywide average.
Right.
Okay, that's all I have.
Okay. Then we'll open it up to folks that may have questions or comments that are here in person. And if you'd like to come up, please state your name, your address, and then what your question is, and we'll try to get it answered.
Please don't hesitate if you got any comments or questions. Now's when we want to hear it. Come on up.
How about the gentleman up over here? Does he have anything?
He's gonna wait, he wants to take care of this, the crowd here first.
Okay. Well, if you do come up with something here as we're allowing the folks online a chance, we'll do that.
But now is your chance to speak your piece if you got something. We really need to hear it, so. Okay, go ahead. You gotta unmute.
There you go.
Okay.
I'm James Clemens. I own the lot on 33965 Wildwood Ranch Road, which is currently an unbuilt lot. We will be building a house there this summer, and I'm quite interested. You say May through August is the time frame, but I wonder how long the actual construction will take once they start.
Typically, a project of this scope can be done within 3 to 4 weeks if they have the crew and equipment there. So,
Do you anticipate that the road would be such that it would be difficult to get large deliveries in?
when we do a road subcut like this, then there's a chance that that particular side of the road they're working on will be sandy and can become rutted, but typically they do it in halves so that traffic can run on half the road. And there will be some time periods like that where the contractor will need to ramp in and ramp out for maintaining access to properties. So it's not an uncommon thing, and the contractors are used to getting vehicles back and forth.
So
Do you have any feel, I mean, May through August is obviously the time frame you've been given, but do you have any feeling for when it would be closer to May or closer to August, or do you have any feeling on that?
Well, most of the time, what we've seen are contractors starting after Memorial Weekend. They let it go through that weekend, busy weekend, and then they begin construction. So I would anticipate a project like this would be started by the first or second week of June and probably wrap up sometime before the 4th of July, usually.
Thank you. That's I think is all the information I needed.
Okay.
These are going to be all bid out. All the projects are going to be bid out if the council approves them. Is there a chance that you can move it around to accommodate? You know, which project you do first?
We can put any conditions we want to in the contract as far as, you know, a particular order of road to be done first. What the contractors typically like to do is get the road reclaimer in, reclaim all the roads while that equipment's been mobilized to Cross Lake for a week or so, and then do their grading work, pipe work, and then get the base all prepped and for all the roads. And then when they begin their paving operations, they'll have paving crews here solid until they pave all the roads at the same time. So that's the most economical way to do it from their standpoint, and you'll probably get better pricing if you give them that latitude in your schedule. So the rule of thumb is the more conditions you place in the contract, the higher the bids will be.
But I think you can be rest assured that the contractor will work with the individuals on the road. They're not gonna hold them
Absolutely.
up.
They're required to.
Yeah.
Access needs to be maintained for postal delivery, garbage, school buses.
Yeah, that doesn't have to be a condition, it's just.
Well, I realize that they're going to take care of milling it all first, and then they're all going to come in and pave all of them at the end. I was just wondering if you could, you know, if you had him at the end, and, you know, it might be, you know, the end of July or whatever, that you're milling the last street and then come in and start paving, he'd have a chance. I don't know how
But
much
the
time.
answer
he
is no to that, Marcia.
What?
You don't, know. You can't control their schedule.
Well, I know you can't, but I'm just saying.
You can't even ask them.
It would be. Do they care which streets they start on
Well,
first?
that depends on their overall summer schedule, so this may be a big project to us, but it's a very small one to them, so, whatever.
Dave has a question.
Yeah, Mr. Schrupp, you got something?
Oh, yeah, I guess it's for Dave Reese. In your letter, and I don't know if it's a standard letter, you talk about boxes.
Correct.
All of those mailboxes are out on 103. So when you go out for bids in the event you do, make sure you're not asking them to install new ones, because none of the residents have them at the end of their driveway. So,
That's right. For all the road projects, the policy is to change out any mailbox supports that don't meet the city's standard to the swing-away style. And so if there are any left out there that don't meet that standard, we'll replace them as part of the project.
oh, even on 103?
Yes.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, anyone have anything else they'd like to say? You can say whether you're in support of the project, against the project. Just give the council your feelings on what's been presented.
You don't have to be afraid of us.
I'm Deanne Temis. I guess I'm kind of against it. We don't actually we live on 103, but we have access to the Wildwind Ranch Road. I guess my question, and my husband just said this isn't the case, but I want to make sure that ours isn't like double or triple or something, because we have pretty much the whole field on the one side. And I don't know if I'm hoping that's not the case, it's just a lot for us, so, but anyway, that's my 2 cents. I don't live right on the road, so I'm not.
Your
doesn't-
driveway doesn't actually access the road to get.
It doesn't. We have one down by our barn that goes out that way, but it's, the access and that sort of thing is not
So
really
it's
an
a
issue
trail.
for us, yeah.
It's a trail onto the,
Yeah,
cul-de-sac.
I mean, that's where our garbage can goes, but, so anyway, I just don't find our road to be, and it's a cul-de-sac, and I just don't find it to be super necessary, but that's my opinion. I don't live right on it, so,
Okay,
anyway.
Dave, so you can answer the assessment question, I guess.
So that particular lot that they own would be considered one and receive one assessment. It's one of the 13. Okay. Okay.
I questioned on the cul-de-sac and the road extension going by that is not improved right now. Is there any plans for a road to go down there?
There hasn't been any plan at Public Works that's come up over the past few years. It does extend through to the back lot line here to the next larger parcel, and that's good planning, in our opinion, to do that. So if the next parcel develops or is subdivided, you've already got right-of-way all the way through, and then the city would be able to connect that road up with a future road going
The
through.
right-of-way is extended through to the next one.
Yeah.
it's just right away at this point.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, does anybody else have anything? Come on up.
Teresa Haynes. I live at the end, down by the cul-de-sac, where it ends. Beyond that, that extra lot is actually owned by our neighbors who aren't here tonight. And as far as I know, she may be putting a house up there. She may not. But beside that, it doesn't look like there's enough space there to actually put a road through. I think when our development was put together, that was designed as a nature path to go behind all of us and around that pond and then back out to 103. Because originally, I think it was designed for horses, like a horse trail. So as far as a road ever going in there, I don't ever see that happening. I don't know that that is wide enough for that to happen. But then my other question is it possible that we could have the mailboxes put at the end of our driveway rather than out on 103? Because 103 is, I mean, that's a fast road.
I like that question.
Okay. It's just a pain to have to go to the end of the road.
So the right-of-way that extends to the back lot line is 66 feet in width for a future public roadway. And I think so it would be wide enough for a public roadway to go to that lot line.
Okay.
And the question regarding the mailboxes, that's entirely up to the U.S. Postal Service. And so they determine where they go, and we put them where they tell us.
We can ask Teresa if we can move them to the internal part, but that's something we'd have to approach them.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is the shoulder on 103 is so narrow that if you're not paying close attention, you get hit pretty quickly.
We understand. We will ask the question on your behalf.
Thank you.
So how is the fire numbers handled with that, Ted, for identification? Usually the addresses correspond, well, I guess they got their street signs there, and that's how it is. Yeah, not the,
The street sign is on the 103, but their addresses are alongside their driveways right now currently, so.
okay.
Okay.
We have plenty of time.
If there's nothing else, I give everyone another chance, otherwise you can close the hearing, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Okay, going once, going twice. The meeting is, okay, good.
My name's Doug Haynes. Last year, the project got put off. Any chance it's gonna happen again?
I didn't catch the question, I'm sorry.
Any chance the project will be put off
Oh.
again this year?
Okay.
Yeah, and there's always a chance, but if the project is included with all of the other 4 project areas, I'd say there's less of a chance. We're hoping that the scale and magnitude of the larger project and contract will result in more competitive bids that are favorable for the council to proceed.
Okay, I'm assuming that's the last question, so let's close this hearing on the Wildwood Ranch assessments. Is that by motion?
I move that we close the public hearing.
I second it.
Motion is second. Sharp probably has to roll call it. Okay, let's just adjourn it. Meeting's adjourned.
Okay.